Homo sapiens emerged in East Africa between the years of 100,000 and 400,000 years ago. They migrated from Africa to Eurasia, Australia, and the Americas. Early humans were hunters and gatherers whose survival depended on the wild plants and animals in the area.
The hunter-gatherer societies of this time were nomadic, meaning they migrated in search of food, water, and shelter. They also invented the first tools, including simple weapons, and learned how to make and use fire. They lived in clans and eventually developed an oral language. They also communicated with the use of cave art.
Through these technological and social advancements, stable communities eventually developed. The previously nomadic early humans developed agriculture and trained domesticated animals. They invented more advanced tools, made pottery, and developed weaving skills.
Currently, new archaeological discoveries are changing present-day knowledge of people each day. Archaeologists studying past cultures by locating and analyzing human remains, settlements, fossils, and artifacts. These archaeologists also applied scientific tests such as carbon dating to analyze fossils and artifacts that they find. Some examples of archaeological sites that have been found is Stonehenge in England, and the early cities of Aleppo, Jericho, and Catalhayuk.
One of the first early river valley civilizations was Mesopotamia. It was located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers on a very fertile valley in Southwest Asia called the Fertile Crescent. The flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates was unpredictable and made farming difficult. This led to the development of irrigation.
One of the major cities located in Sumer was Ur. Mesopotamia was divided into city-states, which governed themselves separately. Mesopotamia had rigid social classes, with slaves being the lowest class, followed by farmers and laborers, merchants and artisans, and finally the upper class, which was composed of priests and kings. Some important Sumerian inventions included the wheel, calendars, a number system, and the invention of cuneiform, the first form of writing. They were the first group to use bronze, which started the Bronze Age.
Mesopotamians were polytheistic and believed in roughly 3,000 gods. Religious buildings called ziggurats were the center of their daily lives. There, the townspeople made sacrifices of animals, food, and wine to their gods. Sumerians believed that the souls of the dead went to the land of no return, a dismal, gloomy place located between the earth's crust and the ancient sea. The Epic of Gilgamesh was a famous ancient Mesopotamian poem depicting religious accounts of myths and legends. It is one of the earliest works of literature in the world.
The Egyptian civilization was located in modern-day area of Egypt. It was the only major river valley civilization located in Africa. The Egyptian civilization was located from the first cataract up to the Nile Delta. The Nile flooded regularly, which made civilization and farming possible in such a harsh desert climate. Egypt was separated into two geographic regions, Upper and Lower. The Nile provided the ease of contact of northern to southern Egypt, which helped unify Egypt's villages and promote trade. The Nile's flooding was as regular as clockwork. If floodwaters were too high, it could destroy homes and crops. If floodwaters were too low, then the amount of crops produced were lowered.
In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were believed to be the descendants of the gods. This leadership is known as theocracy. The hierarchy of Egyptian life started with the lower class, which was composed of slaves and peasants, followed by merchants and artisans, wealthy landowners, government officials, and finally the royal family. They would preserve their dead through mummification, and magnificent pyramids were constructed as a tomb for pharaohs and any wealthy families who could afford it. In contrast to the Mesopotamians' bleak view of death, Egyptians believed in an afterlife, and that if they passed a test for purity, they would live forever in the beautiful other world.
The movement of goods and ideas occurred when Egyptians came into contact with Mesopotamians and traded goods with them. Contact with Mesopotamians led to the invention of hieroglyphics. Pharaoh Menes united all of Egypt and made Memphis the capital, which is located in between Upper and Lower Egypt. This occurred in a period called the Old Kingdom.
The geography of South Asia was mountainous and monsoons dominated its climate. Located between the Hindu Kush and the Himalayan mountains lied the civilization known as the Indus River Valley. The civilization was located near the Indus and the Ganges River on the Indus-Ganges Plain, which means the land near the two rivers. Floods along the Indus was unpredictable. It is unknown how human settlement began in India. The Chinese civilization was located between the Huanghe and the Yangtze rivers. Natural barriers isolated the civilization from the rest, promoting a different direction of cultural growth. The river valley offered rich soil and irrigation water for agriculture, and they tended to be in locations easily protected from invasion by nomadic people.
When the rivers flooded, they deposited loess, or silt, along the banks. This provided very fertile soil for farmers. One of the first dynasties in ancient China was the Shang dynasty. Shang society was divided sharply between nobles and peasants. The relationship was based on the feudal system. Family was central to Chinese society. Early China was characterized by three major dynasties. After the decline of the Zhou dynasty, ancient values of respect, social harmony, and a good government began to fall apart. Consequently, new people and ideas arose to help China. The ideas of Confucius came first between 551 to 479 BC. He believed that social harmony and good government could be restored with 5 relationships, which were husband and wife, ruler and subject, father and son, older and younger brother, and friend and friend.
Another 2 major philosophies of the time that came later were Taoism and the legalists. The Taoists believed that nature would restore social and political harmony, and they believed in the natural order of the world. Contrastingly, the legalists believed in very strict government and based their control off of harsh punishments and occasional reward. Hebrews settled between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River Valley, and the kingdom of Nubia was located on the upper Nile River. One of the particularly important civilizations was the Phoenician civilization. They were located in modern-day Lebanon and were a seafaring bunch. Their many accomplishments include the use of purple dye called murex and the creation of a phonetic alphabet that is the basis for all other modern languages.
Judaism originated with Abraham. He is known as the father of the Jews. Judaism is a monotheistic religion, and they believe that the Messiah hasn't arrived yet. They acknowledge Jesus as a prophet, but not the Son of God. The Hebrews migrated to Egypt because of the drought and the threat of a famine in Canaan. At first, Hebrews were given places of honor in Egypt, but were later forced into slavery.
Moses, an Egyptian Jew, received a message from Yahweh to free the Jews from the Egyptians. He led the Exodus across the Sinai Peninsula to the promised land of Israel. He climbed to the top of Mount Sinai and came down with 2 stone tablets on which Yahweh had written the 10 Commandments of the Bible. The Torah contains the written records and beliefs of the Jews.
Jews have faced persecution throughout history. One example is the diaspora, when the Jews were driven from their homeland by the Romans into exile. Some important things the civilizations had in common were the development of social patterns such as hereditary rulers and a rigid class system. Another was the development of political patterns such as the world's first states, centralized government often based on religious authority, and written law codes. Lastly, all of the civilizations had similar economic patterns such as the use of metal tools and weapons, increasing agricultural surplus and trade along rivers and seas, development of the world's first cities, and the practice of slavery within most cultures in the ancient world.
The development of language and writing started with pictograms such as hieroglyphics from Egypt and cuneiform from Sumer, and the writings from ancient China. Writing eventually advanced to the alphabet of the Phoenicians. Hebrews settled between I'm not ready. I can't.